Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of Evermore. We're back with a fixture focus, and we're going to look at the Newcastle United game coming up the weekend against Leeds United. Mark's joining me in the chair, and as you can see, we've been joined by a Leeds fan, my good mate El Filiacci himself, who's a long-suffering Leeds fan. So I thought there was nobody better to come on and talk about this fixture coming up. Lads, how are we doing this evening?
Good, thank you, mate.
Yeah, good.
Good. I bet you're good, mate. You're sitting prettier than we are at the table, mate. So you must be licking your chops for these magpies coming at the weekend, Phil, I bet you.
A lot better. If we were having this conversation a couple of weeks back, it'd have been a different conversation. But after Sunday's game, it's still like an episode of Casualty at our place. You know, we've got more injuries than we know what to do with. But at least some of the players.
Michael Owen next, mate. That's how much injuries you got.
I read the other day somebody says we need to take murder ball down to manslaughter ball. It's not quite as, but yeah, the injuries. I mean, even today, press conference today, Bamford has recovered from his first injury and got a new one. So there's no Bamford this weekend. This season, I've never known anything like it.
Yeah, it's probably a blessing for us, really, mate, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, obviously our fortunes aren't great, which we're going to get stuck into in a minute. But I suppose just looking at Leeds in general, Phil, just before we get stuck into the actual match itself, it's been a funny season for Leeds, as you just touched on there before. There's been a bit of outside mischief making, so to speak, hasn't it, from the likes of, your Sky Sports and guys like that, trying to make it sound like there's maybe been a bit of unrest with Bielsa, and you got talk shite, as we call them, talk sport, trying to lobby whichever out of work British manager happens to be on the circuit at that particular time to take over the job at Leeds. From an outside looking in, it doesn't look to me like the Leeds fans have ever lost faith in Bielsa, but obviously you're a long-suffering Leeds fan yourself, mate. How is the feeling towards Bielsa? Does he still walk on water there, mate, or was there ever any doubt?
Nah, the man's God to us. He's you can get a bit evangelical about it, and the guy has literally changed the way I think about football, the way you watch football, and just everything about it. We had quite a lot of years of not very pleasant times watching some pretty awful football. And then 4 seasons ago, things changed. And it reminded you that football coaches can coach players to be better. You don't have to just go out and buy, which is very relevant at the moment. You don't have to just go out and buy talent.
Wants to come.
But, he's taken a group of players that we were watching under Monk and Heckingbottom and various others do sort of mid-table, lower-table championship, and there's several of those names that are currently doing very well in the Premier League. Thank you very much. It's just so this season has been all about injuries, and we've been absolutely riddled. But it's only the big teams that are allowed to have shortages and whinge about it and drop fixtures. And when we've got a manager who just gets on with it and has decided that we have a youth system and under 23s that are there to cover the gaps and then uses them, and just because he doesn't make a big deal about it, nobody wants to write headlines about it. But we just got on with it. There's been a loss of form through that as well. I mean, still the list of injuries we've got today, it's ridiculous. Every time we get a couple back, we lose a few more. I mean, against West Ham on Sunday, we had Firpo and Forshaw go off literally at the same time. And we got a 15-year-old on the bench who's part of the Grey dynasty, so he's going to do great things regardless. But when you've got a 15-year-old sat on the bench in the Premier League, things are going a bit awry. But no, he can do no wrong. He could relegate us and we'd still, he's brought the good times back.
They've got a 15-year-old on the bench. I think when I was 15 on the bench, I was drinking a can of special brew, probably from the off-license mark that we probably bought up the road, mate, I would say. But, I mean, it's a good shout on Bielsa, Phil. He's getting loads of praise, Mark, just to bring you in on this as well. And rightly so. I mean, I'm going to get some stories from Phil in a minute because, Phil does wax lyrically about this really eccentric, fantastic character, which we'll come on to in a minute. But for you, Mark, I mean, these guys, other managers, are getting a lot of stick for calling off games. Do you think Bielsa deserves that praise for sticking with it and playing young kids?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. When others, you look at we talked about this on Monday night, didn't we? In the Arsenal situation where you're calling a game off with one COVID case, you've got some injuries and some players away on international duty. That game should not be getting called off. They've got a full squad. It's telling 4 days later they've pretty much got a full squad out, bar the couple that are away. Leeds have just got on with it. Do you know, like 99% of the time up until now, managers would have just sucked it up and got on with it. And Bielsa's just, I think even his comment the other day that he had with, was it Woodsy? Was it Laura Woods?
Yeah.
That she'd asked, did you not think about, requesting the game be called off, given the number of injuries they had? And he went, no, says we don't fit the criteria, but I'm sure they've got less players available than half the teams that have got games called off. And that's testament to Bielsa's just mentality towards the game. It's whatever's thrown at him, he just gets on with it. And, he's got that way about him. And and like Phil said, he has changed everything at Leeds, from, the days of kind of the falling apart chants that kind of come up and again and again. And nobody sings that anymore.
We sing it sarcastically now.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's a huge testament to him to just play with the 23s, the 18s that are there, because that's what it's all about. We've said that for the last couple of weeks. If you haven't got the squad in the first team, you've got 23s, you've got 18s. That's what they're there for. Southampton last season had a bench full of, I said they had an average age of toddler, and Leeds is pretty much heading the same way. So yeah, brilliant. It's great to see him getting on with it. And do you know what? The last two results as well have been really good too. The game at the weekend, and it just shows what a top manager he is.
It's phenomenal. So we are live on YouTube tonight, guys. If you want to join in and drop some comments in the comments below, we're happy to engage. Just jump in, let us know what you think. If it's a comment for Phil with Leeds, if it's a comment for me with Newcastle, if it's a comment for Mark and Aston Villa, just don't bother, because we don't want to talk about that, because we're sicker than buying all the good players and talking about being a Liverpool testimonial squad. But Phil, just to go on to Bielsa a little bit more, mate. I mean, you've told me some wonderful stories about this character. We've heard some of the famous ones, mate, but there was a really special one you told me about when he first got there, and he kind of set a marker out to the players, mate. Do you just want to share that one on the show?
Yeah, I mean,
brilliant that.
It's old hat to Leeds fans, to be honest. This is. But when he first got to the training ground, the first did he think of as the players, he had them walk around the training ground picking up litter. And the point he was making to them was the amount of work that the average man has to do to be able to afford a ticket to watch football, and to try and get them to understand what it meant to the fans and how important the fans were, but also making them humble. But this was a guy who come into a new squad. And reading between the lines, you also imagine it was a bit of a litmus test for those that would either probably bitch and whinge about being asked to do something that they probably thought was beneath them, or those that would just crack on with it. I think we all know that Bielsa's methods are pretty intense, and he demands way more than most football coaches do. So if you've got somebody who's not willing to put a shift in and work hard, it's not going to work. We had a player called Samu Saiz, who was an attacking midfielder, a very talented player, but had never quite done it. Had some really good games for us, but it didn't last long under Bielsa, simply because that he just didn't have the work ethic. But he's I've never read that he's a socialist, but you get the feeling he's definitely a socialist, because he's all about the working man and the purity of the game and what it means, and he believes in playing football in the right way, even if that leads to sometimes us getting our asses slapped in a big way by some of the bigger teams because we've got injuries and things. And that's when, again, going back to people like Jamie O'Hara on TalkSport will be saying, "Oh, you need to change the way you play football. You need to do X, Y, and Z." Well, there's somebody like Dyche at Burnley that's playing what we'd call traditional English football, and he's not doing an awful lot better. Whereas we're now finding our form again and climbing up the table. So, look, watching the football that he produces. Even if I go back to the first game he was in charge with, and we played Stoke on the opening game of the season, we're pretty much the same team we had the season before when we finished bottom half of the championship. The football that day, straight away you knew something very special had happened, because he'd taken a group of the same players, and all he'd done is he'd trained them, given them discipline, given them the instructions, and he had a group of people that were willing to take it on board. And it was just it was heartwarming to see after the years of pain.
I was going to say, it's interesting, mate, because as Newcastle fans, we kind of had that same feeling of anticipation with Eddie Howe. We watched him on the training ground, and he was actually saying words like "run." We thought, "Fucking hell!" Someone's telling him to run. We haven't had that for 2.5 years with Steve Bruce, and it looked really promising from the outside looking in. But as you rightly said, when you saw Bielsa get a hold of that team and those players who people were saying were just average championship players, and you could instantly see that they bought into his ideology and his methodology and everything else. With Howe, there was little sprinkles of that, but as the weeks have gone by, which I'll come on to in a bit more detail in a minute, we haven't really seen a great deal of that coming off for the club. And what I love about Bielsa in particular, and you rightly so touched on it before, there's young kids in that squad that come in, and whether they're 15 or whether they're 25, Phil, they just seem to adapt to exactly what he wants from them. They're running their arse off, they're putting the miles in, they're closing, they look like they've been in that squad for seasons gone by, under this man. And I mean, that's testament. He must command so much respect, not just from the fan base, but throughout the squad as well, mate. Surely, this has got to be the most exciting time for a Leeds fan in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing he does is the infrastructure that he builds around the club, in the under-23 system, even the under-18 system, they're playing the same formations, they're using the same structures, so that his whole ethos is that they're there ready to call upon if they're needed, so that they drop straight in. It's no coincidence that with the injuries that we got on Sunday, when Forshaw and Firpo got injured within minutes of each other, we brought Hjelder on, who I think we signed from Celtic as a teenager. He played centre-back the week before against them in the Cup and played left-back this time around, but just dropped in and looked like he'd been there all day long. Creswell, who's another one who's injured again, unfortunately, as most people are in our squad. They just drop in because they've been trained and they know the system. And even the senior professionals, you can tell that when they're dropped in, they're not thinking, hang on, we need to watch this one, he's not going to be able to play a part. There was a ball from Ayling on Sunday into the midfield to one of the youngsters, which was a bit of a hospital pass. But you think a seasoned professional might be thinking, oh, well, I'll avoid passing to the youngster or the kid in the middle of the park. If once you're in the team, you're playing your part in the system, because the system is so drilled into them that everybody has a part to play. The runs, the fake runs, the 1-2s. Everybody has to play their part. So they're trusted once they're on the pitch. If Bielsa puts them on the pitch, they're trusted on the pitch. It's as simple as that. It doesn't always come off, as we've seen.
Yeah. That's a great comment there by Steve Colby, my mate Steve Colby there in the comments. So why does Bielsa sign 1-year contracts? Does this keep them motivated? I think that's a really good point, that, Steve. What do you think on that one, Mark? Do you think that's a good shout, that with having such short contracts, that it does make those players kind of work a bit harder because they want to earn another contract? And if you sign these guys up to 5 years, you think there is a danger that they just kind of think, oh, well, I've made it in the shade?
I think it's him, isn't it? That's Bielsa's 1-year contracts, and that's what keeps him going rather than
him. That was a player.
Yeah,
sorry, I misread that. Sorry, Steve.
I think that's pretty much probably bang on, isn't it? That that level of, well, if I keep succeeding, therefore I will, I'll stay. I'll sign another year.
Yeah, he earns it
and keep going there. He's just, I think anything like that. It's that. What was the line in Friends, wasn't it? It was the fear, wasn't it, when you leave the job to try and find something else. But in this, it's a case of if I've got a 1-year deal, then I have to sort of prove everything I can within that year before I either move on or sign a new deal. I suppose also it makes it, from a worrying point of view, I suppose you could look at it, is that it allows him to move on much more easily because there isn't the compensation to be haggled over during the contract. So there's that side. But I think for him, it's probably more of a motivational tactic.
The other thing he does, which is quite unique, is his deal, all his backroom staff and his entourage, which is quite significant because of the amount of video work and analysis and that they do, they're not directly employed by the club. They're employed by him. So the deal that he signs is a deal that is basically, he then negotiates for the whole group, and he then deals with them directly. They're his group. So when you get Bielsa as a club, whichever club he joins, there's a certain amount of entourage or group that have followed him globally. And he has the odd addition. So when he was at Marseille and when he was things, but there's certain ones that have followed him from South America, and it's an indoctrination once you get into the Bielsa way of things and you do buy into it. And I get it why other fans and other clubs sort of scorn at it and think we're disciples and things like that. But it's just, like I say, it genuinely has transformed the way you think about football. And some of what we've watched, it's just so much more enjoyable. And it reminds me a bit, I dare I say it, for a few years back when we were wallowing, I quite enjoyed watching Tottenham under Poch at times. And it's only now that you realise, well, hang on, Poch was a Bielsa player.
Yeah.
Where did he learn some of what he was doing and the attacking freestyle of football? And Southampton before that, it's just it's a more attractive game to watch. It's entertainment as well, which ultimately I think we forget. Football, it's a sport. It's there for entertainment. It's not a business. We've just lost sight of that because of the amount of money that's involved.
That's a whole different podcast episode in itself. That, Phil, I think we'd be on for 3 hours talking about that, mate. But they don't all live in that one bed sit with him, mate. All that staff do, because that's a hell of a crap.
Well, no, well, that's what I was going to say. This is the man that, imagine the money he's earning, and he's living in a flat above a sweet shop in Harrogate.
Oh, it's class.
And walks to training every day.
I've never seen him in that Costa Coffee in Wetherby. People keep rumouring that he sits in. I've often been in there doing emails, and I've never seen the man. So I really hope I do. He probably tried me to piss off. Probably he was too busy doing tactics if I didn't see him. But yeah, he's a hell of a character. But just looking at Leeds in general and for this season, obviously, just a little quick summary of how the season's gone for you. You mentioned obviously injuries and stuff like that. Just before we get stuck into the fixture itself, how have you seen the season play out? Obviously COVID and everything else can't be predicted, but are you kind of where you think you were going to be now, or were you hoping to be a bit higher than where you were? Or
personally, no, it's been a grind. If we go back to last season was just enjoyable. We came up, and so therefore your aspirations there are, if we finish one place above the relegation zone, then that's a win. And we went into it, and obviously it was a bit of a weird season because it was all the behind closed doors, so you didn't get a true feel for it. But we finished the season strongly. We finished where we, mid-table, nice and easy, relaxed, everything you want. We had some big results against some big teams. We did very well against the top 4 in certain situations. We had the Man City result, which was ridiculous when you look back. So going into the season, you get your excitable head on, and there's 2 parts of you. You forget that it's the second season, and really it's just about surviving again. And we all know second season syndrome. But you look at what we did last year, and I was thinking, talking to my boys as well, saying, with a couple of key signings, if we spend well here, we could be pushing for Europe. And then we play a certain team in red from Manchester on the first day of the season, and it's a bit of a reality check because we like to get slapped by them just to annoy us all, because it's the one team we don't want to get slapped by. I think we were really affected. All the international breaks we had at the beginning of the season.
Yeah,
we seem to have an international break every other week. And
ridiculous,
I think, again, Bielsa's style of football, you need flow, you need it to be fluid, you need to be on a roll. That combined with the number of injuries we've had, we just never got going. And then by the time the international break stopped, our injury list has just been horrendous. We've regularly got sort of 6 to 9 first-team players out. And with the size of the squad we've got, you just can't do it. So if you look at where we're on the table now, considering the amount of injuries we've had, I think he's done a phenomenal job. And I was, sort of just in your head, you're thinking the likes of Villa, Brentford, Palace are having an okay season. They're doing quite well. And then now after the win on Sunday, I look and I think we're 2 points behind Villa. 1 win within 10th place. And you just, hang on, it's within the short shake. We're just, all the relegation fears that we had seem to have gone. If we win this weekend, then, we're sitting quite comfortable. But as a good Leeds fan, I'm always expecting the worst because I experienced it for sort of 16 years.
I was going to say, you're probably going to be more positive about the fixture than I am, actually, really, to be honest with you. I think looking at it, but I suppose looking from a Newcastle perspective, obviously when we started the season, obviously we still had Steve Bruce, no takeover. We were just expecting either to go down or just to survive by the skin of our teeth. And obviously everything changed. That infamous day in October, we were all hoping for a new dawn. Bruce hung around too long. And then obviously Eddie Howe came in after flirting with a certain Spanish manager. Good evening, as everybody would say. And then that was a bit embarrassing. And then we got to January and we're thinking we're going to spend big. We start really well with Trippier, and then it's just becoming incredibly difficult to get players. And all the while, Newcastle have just been continuously awful on the pitch, really. Yeah. Yes, there's been some slight improvements. And to be fair to Bielsa, he was incredibly generous with Eddie Howe. I think he said, and this is more the managers' union, isn't it? I think he said, you can see they've improved. You can see they've been close in games. And I think it just speaks more of the respect of the man from Bielsa to do Eddie Howe a bit of a favour. But, as we looked at Evermore last night, Mark bashed up a great slide for us in the record and the stats between Howe and Bruce are frighteningly similar. And that's a real concern for Newcastle. And going into this game for me, which we're going to go into in a minute, I look at Leeds and the energy that they have. They're up and down the park. They're in your face. We had that, I think, was it last season when you done us, was it 5-2, I think? You just absolutely annihilated us. I remember, I think it might have been Rafinha or somebody running past Sean Longstaff, and I thought he had a backpack on. He was going to the fucking Lake District or something because he was running that slow that your guys just absolutely road running past them, and everybody was just blowing out their arse. And what worries me this weekend with Newcastle is this could happen yet again. I know some of the boys on Evermore last night, still up there, guys. If you haven't watched it, click like and subscribe. But they were saying that 5 at the back might be the best way to play against Leeds. So it's a concern for me, mate. I suppose moving into the fixture itself, how are you feeling about the fixture itself? You've said there, obviously, you've done well through injuries. We're very, very poor at the moment, very poor, especially at the back. I know you're missing your main man with Bamford. We're going to look at the star men in a minute in terms of a comparison and who to worry about from each team respectively. But as a Leeds fan, mate, I know you're very pragmatic, as you rightly said, but you must be feeling a bit confident with Newcastle rolling into town this weekend.
Yeah, it's also the kind of match that we contrive to bugger up sometimes as well. That's kind of our classic. We weren't expecting necessarily. I didn't go into the West Ham game expecting an awful lot because we concede a lot from set pieces. Oh well, actually that's unfair. We weren't conceding as much as set pieces, but every time they had a corner, it felt like a penalty on Sunday. It was ridiculous. So coming out of that match with 3 points was a bonus.
Great result.
The biggest concern again is, we've got Firpo injured as of Sunday. Forshaw got injured, which is going to be a big loss. We've got Phillips, Cooper injured. Roberts and Gelhardt have just come back by the look of it, but Bamford's injured. We've got Creswell injured. It's still just like The Walking Dead is our training ground. It's ridiculous. So you can end up with the fun thing about watching Leeds now with Bielsa is you don't only just have to guess the lineup, but when you see the lineup, you then get to guess which positions are actually playing him. Because if you go to Sunday's game, at right back we had Dallas, who is officially a midfielder. We had Ayling at centre back, who is officially a right back. We had Koch, who's a centre back at central midfield, defensive midfield. We had Dan James up front, which is one of the funniest things you'll ever see because he can't finish, and he's the smallest man on the pitch. Yet we still cross to him and hope that he's going to win a header. But what he does do is like Scrappy Doo. He just runs around like an absolute idiot. And we'll close down. He's the only person I know that I've ever seen on a football pitch who can be closing one player down and then they pass it to another player and he'll immediately close that other player down because he's that fast. It's just crazy.
Like an exciting
puppy. Puts him up front purely for the press. That's why he does it. But the problem is you get like West Ham in the first half. He had a chance where he was put through 1-on-1. And it was just, he basically was a back pass by the time it finished. It was just like, come on, you need to do a bit better. So it'll be interesting to see what team he puts out. I think with Firpo injured, we'll end up with Dallas at left back, I would imagine. Dallas is the utility man. He's played every position, bless him. Ayling will probably move to right back, and then we'll end up with Stroik and Llorente's back from suspension, which is good. So we've actually got centre-backs at centre-back positions, which is positive. We'll still have Koch as defensive midfielder trying to replace Phillips, even though you're not going to replace Phillips because of the quality he is. And then Rodrigo's back, whether or not he plays or we stick with Click in that position. Harrison will stay on the wing and Rafinha on the wing, obviously. And it'll be James up front again because Bamford's injured. And like you say, you're just going to have to deal with the tiniest centre forward that you've had to deal with in a long time. Whereas you've got one of the tallest ones at the other end trying to bully out.
Who doesn't get across, ironically, who can head the ball and doesn't get across.
Well, you think Trippier would be able to start delivering some balls for you, wouldn't you? I think, isn't that not the point?
I think Trippier's still looking for the receipt go back Real Madrid, I think, on a 14-day buyback, I think, mate. But Mark, just to bring you in there, Phil's just said something scared the shit out of me there, that Dan James is great at pressing. Jamal Lascelles is awful on the ball. So I've just had a
shudder at that
thought. I've just shuddered in my chair, thinking of Dan James pressing down Lascelles' horrific Sunday league touch. Can you see that being a real problem for Newcastle, mate, the weekend?
Yeah, I've got penalty written all over the game for that. Although, having said that, at St James's,
we should have had one. Dan James.
Given, so
That's
yeah,
true.
exactly.
VAR that hates us.
Yeah,
and us, mate, and us. Don't worry, they hate us as well.
So yeah, I think with the way that Lascelles plays, that is an accident waiting to happen. Awesome. So if he is pressing the two at centre back, that could be an interesting outcome. But yeah, I think there are a few key ones back for Leeds, and I think those just make it them a little stronger. Like you say, you've got centre-backs at centre-back, and for a moment when you were going through that team, it started to remind me of Bruce at Villa, where we had a right-back at centre-back, a centre-back at right-back, and a defensive midfielder at centre-back, and a right-back at left-back. We had 3 right-backs playing, and but yours is enforced. Ours was just stupidity.
Some of it's not enforced, though. That's Bielsa. He'll decide that.
Well,
that player is perfectly capable, and who are we to say is wrong sometimes?
No, that's true. And when you've got a player like Stuart Dallas who can play anywhere, I mean, he's brilliant. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league, because he, every raves about the fact that James Milner can play every position. Well, Stuart Dallas can do it, and do it a lot better at times. He has been phenomenal. So, when you've got a player like that, you can pick and choose, and he can then dictate who else, the way that you play against certain teams as well. So like you say, he can, if Bielsa decides, actually, I want Dallas on a particular side against a particular player, then that's the way that will go, and the rest of the players just fit into that tactic. It's I think going back, I think the Lascelles at the back worries me spectacularly, and I'm, as a neutral, you can see that ending badly.
I definitely think so. Phil, what are you like in midfield in terms of your legs? I mean, I know the team obviously have got loads of energy, but what really worries Newcastle fans, and if any are in the comments below, I'm sure they'll jump in and agree with us. If we play a midfield of Sean Longstaff and John Joe Shelby, they run about as quick as I was going to say. They run about as quick as I do after 4 pints, and it really is frightening me to see your midfield running up against them. And that's how we got smashed last time, when our midfield just ran out of gas completely, and your midfield just found another gear and another level. I mean, is that something you think Bielsa will certainly just exploit, the fact that Newcastle don't have that same level of energy? They are slightly better under Howe, to be fair, but still. Yeah,
I mean, whoever we play the same system. Bielsa's methodology is there's plan A, and if that's not working, you just do plan A better. It's press. It's not give anybody time on the ball. It's nick the ball. I mean, Harrison's third goal against West Ham on Sunday was an amazing pass from Rafinha. But if you look at where it started, it was Stuart Dallas coming and nicking the ball from somebody. It got loose, and that's how Rafinha ended up with it. It all started from that press and not giving any time on the ball. Whoever we put in midfield will do that job, and they will do it to their best of their abilities. What we don't necessarily know is who's going to do it. I think Koch will be the defensive midfielder.
Yeah.
And then you've potentially got Click, who's come back into a bit of form. And then it's whether or not it's a Rodrigo playing as a kind of number 10 role, which has never really worked since he's joined us. Or we had Lewis Bate playing on Sunday. He came on as a substitute, but then got substituted himself. But he's only a youngster. He's only been joined us from Chelsea this year. It's whether or not he did enough to justify it. If I was a betting man, it would be Click and Rodrigo kind of, because it's
just a comment on Rodrigo there in the comments from James, one of the Evermore lads. What's happened with Rodrigo, mate? Because was he not a record buy when he came in? Has he drifted away a little bit, mate?
Record sign. It's never really worked. We've never found his position that's ideal to him. I think it was signed as a forward for competition to Bamford. Then Bamford did so well last year. We've never had a real number 10 who can just sit behind in our formation. It's the one thing we've always lacked. So I think there's been an attempt to turn him into that number 10 role. But he's caught, I think he's maybe had COVID a couple of times. He's had injuries. Just never get going. He's had injuries this year. You can tell when he's on the pitch, he's got quality. You can see a pass and he knows what he's doing. Apart from on Sunday when he just stand on the goal line and let it touch him before it went in, so that was offside. So he's a quality player. I think he needs a run in the team. He needs to have some consistent football and find his place. But it's one of those transfers that you worry that it's never quite going to work out. And because he was our record signing at the time, we've come back up and we spent a bit of money. He was the great hope, and it's just never quite happened. Other players have gone on around him. So it'd be a shame if it doesn't happen. But again, he's only just come back from injury. He came on as a sub the other day. Looked lively, but he just needs a run.
Yeah, I'd quite like to see Joe Willock in that midfield, Mark. When we're talking about legs and energy, Joe Willock's been quite poor for Newcastle this season, but this could be a game, even if he doesn't get a goal, which he obviously can't seem to get a goal to save his life at the minute. But do you not think putting Joe Willock in potentially would give us a bit more of a balance of energy as Newcastle in this game?
Yeah, I think that's the one thing for if you end up with Longstaff and Chat, you need legs in there that are going to motor. Joe Linton has been very, very good in that role. I just think Willock gives you a little bit more of a dynamic in the forward areas. We saw it last season, and you want him to sort of catch fire again, don't you? And start to get one or two goals, but it does give you a little bit more in that area, or should. Certainly, he did show it last season, but I don't know. I sort of think he'll go with the three, with Joe Linton, Longstaff, and Shelvey as almost a safety net, because then it's trying to nullify the more attacking threats around from the Leeds sort of midfield, and then he can utilise Joe Linton to drift wide to try and just maybe hold up Rafinha a little bit. But I don't know. I think I'd prefer to have a little bit more of a forward threat. If you're going to play two of the more defensive-minded ones, you want somebody more attacking in there rather than just four defenders, three defensive almost midfielders, and then Saint-Maximin trying to run around like you know what I mean? Well, he just runs around and does his own thing. So,
that's a very good segue, Mark, because there is two star men on show here, and me and Phil spoke a little bit off air about who we're both worried about. Mark's done one of his fantastic slides, as anybody who's watched the channel before will know. Mark absolutely smashes these up. So, Mark, if you want to just pull up this slide, these are the two guys really that, let's be honest, are probably gonna win this game. So, Phil, just throwing it over to you about your main man, kind of Rafinha. Mark's done the comparison there. Obviously, you can see saint-Maximin is in the gold and Rafinha is in the blue. We're talking about two really, really talented footballers here. But, I mean, for me personally, as a Newcastle fan, I think Rafinha's more consistent. Potentially saint-Maximin is maybe more explosive when he does what he does. But I know you're worried about our French maverick, but, just tell us a little bit about your Brazilian wonder here, mate. What a player.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go back to the comments about Rodrigo, where he's never quite settled. With this guy, the moment he turned up and the moment he set foot on the pitch, we realised we had something quite special. I think we've all been there where we've watched our teams and you see a player who's head and shoulders above the rest. Seems to have more time on the ball than anybody else, does better things than everybody else. But what I like about Rafinha the most is, and playing for Bielsa and being in a Bielsa team, it's always nothing anyway, is his work ethic, his teamwork, his discipline. I think there was a stat the other day I saw where he's got the most sprints in the league. He works so damn hard, but the difference is when he's got the ball at his feet and when he decides to do something with it. And we've seen it with Brazil now as well. He went off and decided to make his Brazil debut and did very well and started linking up with Neymar. And then the upsetting thing there is you start thinking, well, chances are this is going to end at some point because somebody's going to come in with a ridiculous amount of money and purchase him. So let's enjoy it while it's here. But no, he has everything. If we'd have had a fit squad this year, I think there would have been some testing of maybe in a more central role, going back to the number 10 type thing. But we've never been in a position to try and do that. Hence, the graphic shows he's been predominantly our right winger. But he'll cut in and do things, and some of his passing and his range of passing, and he's leading goal scorer at the moment as well.
Mark, can you just pull the slide back up a second there? So just looking in comparison, obviously, so Maximin is an enigma. He's a maverick and all this stuff. I mean, I made a joke on Evermore last night that these are just superlatives people use instead of using the word wanker. But I'm not saying he is a wanker. He's a fantastic footballer, but he's so frustrating at times. I mean, we spoke about getting the ball in the box there before for Dan James. We've just signed a striker who's basically only good at heading the ball and holding the ball up. And we've now got a winger who does about 19 step overs and 7 or 8 360 turns and won't put the ball in the box. But he has the tendency to beat 3 players and smash it in the bottom corner. As you can see from the heat map there, you're talking about 2 completely different players. Rafinha has that tendency, as you say, Phil, to play out on the wing, to pull out wide and to deliver those crosses for Bamford or for whoever may else be in the box. But Saint-Maximin is he's like a karaoke ball. He's just all over the place. He's got the highest dribbles, I think, in the league, Mark, hasn't he, in terms of successful dribbles next to your old mate Adama Traore. But ASM seems to have a little bit more of an end product. Phil, I know you're worried about ASM. Just tell us a little bit about why you're worried about him, mate.
Because the Achilles heel in Bielsa's system is the kind of the man marking and everybody picking up one person. So the moment a player is able to run beyond their marker and open up the pitch, it's like a tidal wave just runs all the way along the pitch. So you'll see it quite often if you end up with a ball playing centre back who's willing to run the length of the pitch. If he gets past his marker, he could literally run then all the way to the edge of the area because you've got several players looking, going, hang on, who's picking him up? So the moment you've got somebody who is a ball carrier and can go past the man, it's the freedom of the city for a bit. And at some point, then somebody has to step out to deal with them. That then leaves a gap with somebody else. So as much as he is an unknown quantity because nobody quite knows what he was doing, against us and our tactics, as we've seen the last couple of games, he causes us problems. Somebody like Chris Wood, for example, it's okay. Well, how are we going to deal with him? We need centre backs. We need ball winners. We need to go up and make sure that if you're not winning the header, you're at least stopping him from directing it, and you're winning that second ball in and around him. With ASM, anything goes because you never quite know what he's going to do. But running at us is our Achilles heel, definitely.
Yeah, we never know what he's going to do either, mate. That's the most frustrating part. But James has just popped in with a funny comment there. I wish Carlton Palmer was still playing for your mob. We might have a chance. I don't know, mind you, James. I think Carlton Palmer would probably skin 4 of our players and put one in the bottom corner the way we're playing. We've been absolutely.
I don't know. There's some hideous early 90s memories there that I don't want to go back
to. Isn't Carlton Palmer's son playing somewhere now? Does he play for Man City or something? Carlton Palmer's son. I'm sure he does, I'm sure he does. I'll have to look that up, Mark, later on. But yeah, I mean, ASM has that ability, Phil, definitely to turn it on a sixpence and win your game. We've seen him do it so many times for us. But we had a conversation about this the other night, and as much as we don't rate Steve Bruce at all. I don't think anybody in this podcast rates Steve Bruce at all. But Saint-Maximin's one of them types of players that a manager like Steve Bruce might get the best out of because he's willing to give him a cuddle, tell him he's wonderful, and say, do you know what, Alan, you just get out and do what you want to do. Whereas managers like Bielsa and Howe, to a lesser extent, want him to do a particular role for the team, and he's not that kind of player. He's not got that level of discipline. So depending on how it goes against you guys at the weekend, if we're bombarded with you guys just coming forward and he's consistently losing the ball like he has done for the last few weeks, to be honest with you, and he puts us in real dangerous positions, he'll spend most of the game standing out with his hands on his hips, not doing anything, while poor Paul Dummett's getting 3-on-1 or something at left back. So that is the danger. But then also I do see why you're worried going the other end, because if we break and he's got it, he might just do that little bit of magic, mate. But the worrying thing for us, Phil, I think, and Mark, I'll bring you in on this one as well. We are so bad at the back, whether Patrick Bamford's playing or whether Patrick Bamford's Nana's playing. I think there's a good chance they'll probably get a fucking shot on target against this back four, Mark. I mean, this is going to be where Newcastle are going to lose this game, I would say. But would you not agree at the back? Again,
it's always the weakest link, isn't it? And the attacking sort of talent that Leeds have, even without Bamford there, the form of Harris and the form of Rafinha, that's just going to be a huge worry. And I suppose Trippier at right back, can he do a good job in sort of marshalling Harrison from that left-hand side? I think he'll do a good job there, but it's the other side you then got to worry, because Rafinha down that right is going to be up against, well, Dross basically, isn't he? So he will have their life, again. And even with James, you imagine the balls through to the little, not to play on the title of our podcast and everything, but the slide rule passes through to Dan James potentially for him to run through onto. So Newcastle's defence is a shambles, and
We've got no pace, Mark, either through the middle of that whole side. There's no pace. So if that guy, if James just gets a runner, as Phil says, we're absolutely fucked, mate. Nobody on our team's catching him.
He could run from the edge of the box with a 30-yard head start and still beat most of Newcastle's side to the lead to the Newcastle area. So it's the lack of mobility is huge. I think that's one thing that they're obviously looking to try and change in the transfer market, but it's just getting more and more difficult to do that. Obviously, there's going to be no new players brought in time for the game. If you're bringing in sort of overseas ones, they're going to need sort of international clearances and stuff. That's not going to happen in time. So it's going to be the current squad that's going into the game. And I just, fear that this, especially with Leeds' return to form, had it been a few weeks ago, this might have been different because I think Leeds were struggling. You know, you come on the back of that with it 7-0 and a 4-1, and you just think, is this...
Never happened.
Could this be the
talking about?
No, this
Christmas trick just to forget that one, Phil.
But it's just, but they were struggling with injuries. Do you know what I mean? It was a. You mentioned the word grind earlier, Phil, and that particular bot was going to be a grind, but you've then got that little bit of a break enforced. It wasn't through, it wasn't through choice like Arsenal. And come out and get some really good results the other side, and they carry that into this weekend. This is going one way.
Oh yeah, but we'll get some predictions in a minute. But just talking about new players, I mean, you're right, Mark. Yet again, we said at this on the episode last night that don't know what the owners are doing. There's a lot of pissing around, going around, haggling over stuff. I mean, I said the other day, and I'll say again, if you're up shit's creek without a paddle and someone offers you one, don't question how much it costs. Just grab it and paddle like fuck until you get upstream. That's basically where we need to be. But the only player who seems to be linked is Jesse Lingard. Now, if that is pushed through quite quickly, he might potentially make that deadline to play. Jesse Lingard, being a Premier League proven player, could walk straight into the Newcastle team, probably half pissed and be better than everybody else on the pitch. But I'm not holding out much hope for that, really. I don't know how we're even going to line up, Mark, to be honest with you. I know, Phil, you're very pragmatic, mate, just to bring you in. Outside of ASM, obviously, is there anybody in that Newcastle team that scares you at all? I'm going to regret asking this, mate, but is there anybody?
Not really. Once upon a time, Chris Wood, bear in mind, Chris Wood played for us for a season and bagged 30, and we know what he's capable of, but he's not exactly... on top form at the moment. He's been turned into, his years at Burnley have turned him into what he really is, which is a target man to knock it down in the hope that somebody else can get onto it. I'd like to think our centre-backs can deal with that. Midfielders, is it Joe Litton suddenly decided he wants to play football and he's not a bad player? I watched the game a couple of weeks ago, but that, again, I watched some of Watford, which, I don't know why I did that because it was painful. Watching YouTube.
Very painful, mate. Painful for me.
But he wasn't effective. I think Shelby on his day can do some damaging, but I just think against our midfield, he hasn't got the legs for it. He just hasn't got the fight for it. He doesn't want to.
He's got no runners either, Phil. When he gets the ball, he's got no runners. You look, and they're all shit scared. They're all just kind of standing static. It's only ASM that moves. Everybody else just stands there and looks at them. It's mental.
But I think you've got a group of players who are either low on confidence, low on form, or the awful truth is just aren't necessarily good enough. You've Trippier, obviously, has got some quality. I think if we're not careful and you end up with some balls coming in for Wood from the wing, then you've got problems.
That's a good comment by Robbie there. That's a good comment, but also extremely depressing for me, Robbie. Thanks for that, mate.
But it's lump it up front and try and get on the second ball, which, saint-maximin can do that for you. But I'd like to think if we turn up and do what we're capable of, it's a home game, it's going to be a sellout, it's going to be a hell of an atmosphere. It's two big northern clubs. It's everything it should be, but I'd like to think that, it should be a comfortable day at the office for us. But it is Leeds United, so if ever we can make something a lot more difficult than it ever needs to be, we will do that.
I'll see. Well, go on then, Phil. Let's get in with the predictions then, mate. You've just said it there. If you can do all of the things there, it should be a good day at the office for you. What does your gut say, mate? What's the score prediction going to be for you?
2-0.
2-0 to Leeds?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good shout. Mark, what about you as a neutral?
Yeah, I'd go with that. I was going to say 3, to be fair. I think Rafinha is going to have a day. And I just don't think Newcastle can cope with him and with James's pace. Yeah, I can see this being 3-0.
You're starting to sound like Di singing all these Welsh players' praises, mate. I'm starting to get a bit worried here.
I have Welsh family, so I'd have to lean slightly that way. Do you know what I mean? So
I didn't know Rafinha was Welsh.
No, but he's adopted, I think.
Is that Rafinha Boyo?
Rafinha Boyo, yes. He loves a turnip. Yeah, I mean, look at it. Looking at the point there, guys. I mean, God, I've got to the point now. I've said it on my match review, and I said it at the Evermore podcast as well. Newcastle have had so many chances to try and get themselves out of the shit here, as has Eddie Howe, and he's blown it. I look at Leeds. I think they're better coached, way better coached. I think the players have got a winning mentality and a fighting mentality, as you rightly said, Phil. We're a team of losers, which James said on our podcast last night. Nothing in that team inspires me with confidence that they're going to have the fight to go up against a Bielsa-driven Leeds United, and he will drive them. He won't let them be complacent. He won't say, these are shit. Just go half-arse, lads, and you'll get a result. They will come at us hammer and tong, and I just don't think we've got it in us to survive. We've got a couple of good players. Yes, Trippier is a very good player. Joe Litton's looked a bit better in recent weeks, but for me, guys, I'm going 3-0 to Leeds. I think this will be a whitewash. No pun intended. I just don't think we'll have a hope in hell. Unless those players can prove to me that they've done something different, or he changes it. I was looking at some of the pictures of them training, and there was a lot of pictures of Matty Longstaff training, and maybe a change in that midfield, a bit of freshness could do something. But I mean, Matty couldn't get a game for Aberdeen, so I don't know how the hell he's going to save us against Leeds. But yeah, that's a full house to Leeds, lads, and it's not going to be a very good game, I don't think, from a Newcastle fans' perspective. So we've got a comment in the comments there, Mark, from Robbie. So what did he say in there? I've got my specs on, mate. That's how old I'm getting. You want to read that one, mate?
I think Leeds press high, which means 2 have to go long to get out, and our centre-backs win the aerial battles. Yeah,
it's a fair shout.
I mean, the other chance you've got is we're sat here on Thursday, so we could have another 12 injuries by Saturday, the way this season has gone. But in all seriousness, the other thing you can do is we play at our worst when people play 2 up front, because he will always revert to three at the back and wing backs, and we don't play as well. Yeah. When we're not playing with 4 at the back in our it's offensively a 4-3-3, but we never truly play like that. But the problem is you put 2 up front, you're then leaving space further down the pitch that we can take advantage of potentially. So it's a difficult one. I think it is awful. You got, because of the play you've signed up front now, you are going to get to the point where it's lump it and see what you get in and around what you can do with it. But you'd like to think most Premier League defences should be able to handle that. But Burnley have built survival on that for the last 10 years or so. It's probably going to end this year, but they've had a good run considering they've played hoofball.
Well, what worries me as well? Go on, Mark. I was just going to say.
Yeah, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll let you jump in a second, but when we talked about Chris Wood there, Phil, what worries me is we see Richie at left back, and I think that's just an absolute suicide move. He'll put Richie at left back to whip balls in, and Richie will get murdered. So sorry, Mark, you were going to say something there.
Well, I was going to say on that Burnley comment is Burnley were built to play that way. Newcastle aren't. And it almost gets back to with Carroll. When Carroll was there, Carroll would come on, and all of a sudden that team would develop. Well, we'll just hit the big man, but they actually don't have a plan of what to do when they do that. So Carroll might win the ball, but there's nobody anticipating where that ball was going 99% of the time. So if they do the same thing again, they're going to have to hope that Saint-Maximin is anticipating where that second ball is going to drop. And I think he's probably going to be so isolated at that point, there's going to be no runners, especially if he does play those 3 in midfield. You're going to have nobody bridging that gap. So no runners going beyond like you would maybe have if you had a Lingard or Willock playing that might, drop in beyond Wood if he wins the ball. And it can just end up one-way traffic. It's just going to bounce backwards and go straight back the other way. And that's the danger for Newcastle when they're not built to play in that particular way.
Well, what's really worrying is the next 3 games. Obviously, we've got Leeds, much better side than us, press high. Everton will have a new manager bounce with Duncan Ferguson there. And obviously, we've got the Villa, and these three teams on the day are capable of turning us over. And unless we can add more players after Leeds, as you rightly say, Marcus, we've missed the deadline. I can't see where the next win's coming from, unfortunately. But I'm going to be back with another post-match review on Saturday, probably through my fingers again. Sad and trying to hold back the tears. What's James saying there? Trippier's a class act.
Trippier's class act. Right backs don't win your games of football. You're probably right. I mean, Trent will probably argue against that, but no, I agree with that comment entirely.
Yeah, well, I'll leave the last word for you, Phil, as you're our guest, mate. Fantastic to have you on this episode, mate. Thanks for coming on. So, last word with you, mate. At the weekend, you and the lads, I'm sure, will be taking this game in and rubbing your hands together.
Well, the only thing I will say is that I'm feeling quietly confident, and whenever that happens, my football team will do everything in their power to disappoint me on a Saturday. So, with that being the case, you've got every chance of getting everything you need on Saturday.
Well, that's it. Fingers crossed. Well, let's hope it's a decent game. But yeah, we are all feeling the worst. But thanks for coming on, Phil. Mark, as always, thanks for joining us, guys. And sorry, we've got one more one for Robbie before we shoot off.
Phil, do you think Rodrigo starts?
I think he will. Assuming he's got his fitness up because he'd only just come back from injury against West Ham, he was on the bench. Assuming they've seen the stats because they look a lot at numbers in training and minutes and things like that. Assuming he's there, I think he will start because of the lack of Bamford. But it's whether or not I still think he'll put James as like the focal point just to do the press and have Rodrigo drop back a little bit. Tyler Roberts is supposed to be back, but again, he's only just back from injury. So I think he'll start.
Well, we'll certainly be interested, mate. I think all those Newcastle fans are feeling quite defeatist, and hopefully, Eddie Howe's boys prove us wrong, but we're not holding that much hope. But that's us all wrapped up for this episode, guys. Thanks for tuning in and watching. Thanks for all the comments below. If you like this type of thing, please click like and subscribe. Me and Mark will be back with some pitch patter on Monday. We've got a few people that take some shots at Mark, especially a certain moody Portuguese superstar who doesn't like being substituted. So tune in for that one, guys.
I need to learn what the Portuguese for Le Sulk is. These now become
Ronaldo. That's the Portuguese for Sulk, isn't it?
I just want my kids to stop shouting "Siu."
Oh God!
No,
yeah,
God. Unless your name is Sue, don't shout Sue. And on that note, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Slide Road Pass and Evermore.
See ya.
Cheers, guys.